Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can.
Good morning, Mateo. How are you?
Brother, I am standing, so I'm doing well.
That's good.
I am grateful to be here. How are you, man?
I'm good. It's a new week and a lot of prep. We got a big event we're throwing next week. With a lot of our friends in the space. And actually one of our guests today that is we're going to be seeing there. So that I'm excited for that. But it's just been busy work. Yeah. Lots and lots of busy work. It's interesting looking at the market right now and how like in being in sales and like having like how hard, like you always have to work hard, right? Like working hard is part of the deal, but it's a hell of a year. It's got a little bit different feel to it, you know. You're scratching for what you can get, but season 4.
Let's be clear, like you're in a competitive space too. Like, you look at like both of the areas in which we work in, like investment right now, right? And you're building into that space. It makes sense, but it's also not the space it was a year or two ago. So,
yeah. And then being in the software side, someone to change software when the market is, who knows?
Man, that is, but no, I think it's a hell of a job, man. So. Hats off to you.
Season 4, episode 13. We have an amazing guest. I've known this guest forever. She's always been one to jump in with both feet with some of my crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love her for that. Known her like almost as long as I've known you, the one, the only, Miss Brittany Blackman of Breathe Easy Rentals. Thanks for joining us, Brittany.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. Excited to be here.
We're stoked to have you on. It's been a long time coming, and we're talking before we started the recording. It's just what I love about you and people like you is you wear your emotions on your sleeve. You're not afraid to put yourself out there and tell it how it is, and So we definitely want to get into that, but how the hell did you get into the space? Like we always kind of start here, like, you live in one of, you live and work in a vacation rental mecca,
Right.
Quite possibly, top 2-3 destinations, especially drive to number one next to Gatlinburg, drive to destinations in the, US for sure. Like, did you grow up and you're like, what, Mom, Dad, I'm gonna be in vacation rentals? Or how did you get into it?
So I am originally from North Georgia, and I had actually come to Destin, Florida on spring break when I was in high school. And really long story short, met someone. We lived in the same town. So after spring break, we moved back. Or not moved back, but went back to North Georgia. And then anyways, we decided we wanted to move somewhere. We agreed on Destin, Florida. So a year or so later, after I graduated high school, we moved down to Destin. And I, at that time, had no idea what a vacation rental was. I'd never heard of it. I knew that, Destin was very tourism based, but that was literally about the extent of my knowledge. And I started working on the harbor, doing direct sales, all these different things. I wasn't in love with that. Wasn't in love with the unsteady paycheck either. And so that's when I first found the industry, and it was for a reservations position. And so it was very basic entry level. And I was like, okay, let's go see what this is about. It seemed cool because it wasn't like a hotel. A hotel kind of reminds me of a bank, like you're like stuck in this area and you can't get out behind this desk. So I didn't really find that appealing, but this weird vacation rental industry, I don't know, it seemed like the good little spot to hop in. And then that was probably going on 12, nearing 13 years ago at this point.
Yeah. So was your first like entrance into, was it with Gibson? Was it there? Did you go to Gibson, beach rentals, and were you there for like, I see, you were there for almost 9, you were there 9 years.
Yes, yes. So that's where I started in reservations. And then very quickly after I started, the operations manager left. And so the owners of the business and I and a few employees were kind of left scrambling, trying to figure everything out. And then shortly after that, a few months later, the owners wound up moving to Alabama and pretty much said, "Hey, Brittany, you got this." And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, sure, no problem. And so that's when I, was ops manager then for, like you said, it was about 9 years that I was there total before I left.
That's insane
Wow.
to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane. Here, talk about trial by fire. I mean, because I mean, that company, you had what, over, over 100, 150, 200, like, I don't know exact number. Like, it wasn't a small property management company especially at that time. I think it was bigger back then than it is today.
Mhm.
And please correct me if I'm wrong. And, it's just interesting the amount, hey, you're a reservationist. Now you're the ops manager, and you're going to see a lot of things that are, I think obviously you are today where you are today because who you are as a person, but also these things that you learned on the ground floor of running a large property management company in one of the busiest vacation rental destinations in the world. Like that must have been insane. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would compare it to a sink or swim feeling, like you either have to get it figured out and keep moving forward or you're going to sink. And I always say that this industry and being in it teaches you things that a book will never be able to teach you. There's some great educational books out there, things that have definitely helped me. But I could not even write a book about what I do and it encompass everything that I see, hear, and feel every single day. And it's all we always see something new. And so that's the cool part of it, is back way when, we were left we were left to kind of fill that void when that ops manager left. So we had to figure out the processes. This is back when technology did not exist. We had paper service orders and, printed out our reservation reports for the day. And that was like really big stuff. And so over, the past 12, 13 years, obviously technology has really aided in that. And then I am very thankful for my past because when I did start the business, having to go back through what are SOPs and different procedures and reasons and how we do things and using the newer technology to help with that, like it all comes into play. And for me, of the success that I'm at now, because if I wouldn't have had this history, I can't imagine just jumping into this industry right now, not having experience. I don't even know how to tell people to start.
Well, that's such an interesting question. I mean, I mean, it's an interesting story, interesting perspective too, because you actually jumped in the industry at a time that was kind of pre this tech growth, right? And like pre, focusing on bringing, operations and operational efficiency through technology, right? Into a demographic that wasn't widely embracing it, right? Like, and wasn't widely looking for it. And you know, I always say, kind of just comparing what you said, like theory and application are two different things. You can read a book all day long, but unless you've been knee deep, and John knows this, like even coming from the vendor side and being a manager, like it's completely different. And I say this all the time until you've had your elbows deep in it, like you just don't get it. And so I guess my question to you is like through your experience and on this journey, do you feel like the tech side of our industry is listening to you? Do you feel like, you're now with your experience able to kind of give them feedback into the tools that would kind of better, managers and yourself, of course, included. Do you feel like your voice is being heard in that conversation?
Absolutely. I think at the beginning when technology really started coming out in the industry, nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew what we needed help with. So it was like a lot of these just random things that got pushed out. And obviously, a lot of that gets weeded out over time. And, some of the best vendors that we utilize, they've got a lot on their plate. Y'all have to figure out, how do you how do you appeal to small property managers and how do you appeal to large property managers? And that's actually been an interesting thing since I've started my business. When I was at Gibson, when I started way back when, we probably had about 40, 45. We grew it to about 115 when I left. Obviously, I started from scratch. I'm at 25 now. So it's been really interesting because my needs from the technology I was using versus now as a smaller company is different. And so I've had to go back to these same vendors that I've worked with for years and go, okay, well, I needed all that at Gibson and y'all built it and it was great. But now I have 25 properties and now these are my needs. I don't have a big, cash flow budget like we had at that for an existing company that was in operation for years. And, these are the different little, tweaks that I need because I don't have a team that can do all these things. It's me and technology. So the conversation has definitely changed from my side. And again, the tech guys out there and ladies definitely listen a lot more. And I feel like if you don't get that feedback, then you don't survive in this space. We're a relationship industry.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Love it. Let's talk about that transition from Gibson to Breathe Easy. So you've been with Breathe Easy now for almost 3 years. And congratulations. And because I remember talking to you, early on, you're like, oh, I got 7 and I'm stressing out. I got 7 properties. I don't think I'm gonna go more than 15. So I'm actually pretty surprised that you're at 25. I love it
Can we
because I
say
know
25 is nothing to shake a stick at like
no,
that?
no. I know. But I remember when she said it was 7, she was like, oh man,
Yeah.
I can't do this. But let's talk like what was the catalyst? And I know there's lots of things. Like what was it where you finally said, fuck it, I'm done. I can do this. I'm going out on my own. Like I know that obviously there was tumultuous things going on between whatever, that doesn't necessarily matter, but there was a reason why you finally said, fuck it, I'm going to start my own thing. Like, can you kind of go back to that and then talk about like, I don't want to say necessarily the anxiety because I bet there's anxiety, but there's a lot of like positive, like, this like entrepreneurial juices. You're like, "Fuck, I could do this. Like, I've been doing this for someone else. Why can't I do this on my own?" Can you kind of talk about that transition a little bit?
Yeah, it's absolutely a roller coaster. That is a fact. So there's highs and lows. I will have to credit the whole entrepreneurial spirit to my parents. That's just the household we were raised in. We always gave 200%. We were raised that we owned everything that we did to its fullest, and my parents had their own businesses and different things like that. So that just was ingrained to me at a very young age, and so with that it had been a goal for many years while I was working there, to buy the business. And, where the pivot point actually happened was honestly during COVID. I think we had canceled probably about 700 reservations when our governor shut us down in Florida. And it was hard. Like, we have to deal with people and emotions on a daily basis, and then you add all those layers of all of that was going on, and it was hard. Like, my anxiety was out the roof, having panic attacks, and, I remember, like, not TMI, but you said this was unfiltered. I remember one day going into the bathroom, and I was just sitting on the toilet, just falling for, like, no reason, like, nothing had just happened, and my husband comes in there, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm, like, hyperventilating, and he's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was just like, "I just can't do this anymore," and, like, that was, like that time frame was where it just changed for me of, like, "What am I doing?" Because I don't have anything to show for this tomorrow. I I don't have anything. I have my name and that's it. I don't have a business. I don't have any of this. And that's just when it really hit home to me of going back to a goal that I had set in my mind years ago that I wanted to own a company. And so that was it, and I tried it one last time going back to the owners. We could not make things meet. They were not ready to sell, which was fine, but I was ready. I'd hit that point. I needed just something to be able to say that this was mine. And whether it failed or whether it did, awesome. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted something to call mine. And so that's when, you know, tried it again. That didn't work. Turned my notice in. And that's when it was like, okay, well, now you really got to do it.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you talk this big talk, Brittany. Now you have to get out there and actually do it. And it was cool. I knew several people in the industry. A lot of people had helped me with advice, suggestions, connecting me with other people. So that was all very helpful. But I will say too, the other advantage of that was that I had all these cheerleaders behind me and I could not let everybody else down. I couldn't go out on and start all this and then go back to all these people that I knew in the industry and be like, well, actually, no, I was just tired. I was just so afraid of failure. I just didn't even try. Like, I can't do that.
Let's
And
let's talk about that for a second. Because
Right.
that's a real thing. Like that's a real thing. And I love that again, wearing it on your sleeve. Like we'll put ourselves out there, and I'll put myself out there, and I'll be halfway through, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Why did I dive in so deep in this? But then you can't give up. You just got to keep pushing through because if you give up, like you're letting yourself down, but and then it's whatever. Like even if you're just looking at it from like an optics standpoint, like I'm involved in all these different things. If I just fail on this, what does that say about me? And what does it say about future me? Man, that's a real thing, and that's a hard thing to battle, like personally sometimes too. It'd be like, "Ah, man, like didn't want to dive in this deep into what I'm doing, but I'm in it. I
Yeah.
guess I'm going to keep going because I don't have any other options, which kind of sucks sometimes to say you don't have any other options because if people were true and they're your people, then. But at the same time, I totally get it. It's a real thing. What's up? And just Teo, you're going to say something.
I was gonna say, but the mindset is like the reality is you gotta untangle that conversation out of your mind, man. Like it's because keep it in a healthy space, man, because that can take you places you don't need to be. You will be okay,
100%.
right? Like at the end of the day, like, and that's the part, like, and we've been there, and it's so important to understand your worth. And I think that's what is incredible about your story to me is you double down on yourself, right? Like, and you knew who you were, you know what you wanted to do, and you seized the opportunity to do it. You took the road that most people wouldn't, right? And I'm sure that you had an immense amount of support, but I'm sure you had people that were looking at you like, "Are you serious? You're doing this now? Like here?" And
Yeah.
you
In
can't just
COVID,
suck
during
that. You
COVID.
can't just suck it up. You can't just go suck it up and go. So, like, no, I mean, that's to me, that is, that's the action of a leader. And that's somebody that, is going to do something incredible, that's passionate about it and is going to succeed because look, it takes those risks. And yeah, John, we see that, we know it. It takes risks. Like, amazing things don't just happen, by themselves, and they don't always happen in these neat boxes. But
And
uh,
even when you do put yourself all the way out there, Brittany, you mentioned this, you're like, it doesn't matter if I fail or I succeed. I mean, obviously you want to succeed, but at least you put yourself out there.
yeah,
And then, it's those, there's like 19 cliche things I could say right now, but like, I probably seen on a dentist's wall someplace, but like, it's, I'm not even gonna go there, but like if you don't put yourself out there, there's no room for success, right? There's no personal growth unless, you learn from failures, all these ventures and things you try that don't work, next time it's gonna work or you're gonna tweak it a little bit differently. Um
so I have
and
a
real
question. Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna add to that real quick. We're talking about, okay, when Brittany was starting the business, she has this, this fear and this anxiety of this and similar to y'all. 3 years later, that anxiety doesn't go away. It's just different. And so, like I've recently been meeting with a life coach because that's the thing. I feel like when you're in a high achieving spot, a leadership position, entrepreneurial, whatever it be, you've got to always work on yourself. And that those, Mateo, to your point, the self doubts will come in, the darkness, the fog. It is real, and you can have a lot of good months, a lot of good weeks, but it's going to come back. And I feel like that's very natural. And one thing I had to like swallow is like it's not weak of me to search for someone who can help me continue to be better. And so, with this life coach that I have, like she's helping me work through just so many different things. And it's not, a weakness to me because all she's going to do is elevate me, and I'm going to continue to do more and do better. And so again, like, it's not something that's just when you start the business that you have to deal with, or just when you get a new position. Like, this is a continuous thing that you always have to do and work on and keep yourself up and elevated and high, so you're not looking down.
No,
100%.
I agree.
True story. Like, and I think for all those that are listening, to the podcast, like, think about, where you're at and what you're doing, and it's cool. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, if fuck, man, this is hard. Like,
Mhm.
putting yourselves out there is hard, and it's in what we see on the front and what we put ourselves on social and on our websites and in our business is just like one aspect of our lives, and that's the other. Like we all have lives behind the scenes that are delicate and are emotional and they're deep and they're thin, and in what you see on in what I put out on social may or may not be 100% how I'm feeling all the time. And so I think, understanding that, face value is just face value. And then there's a lot more behind that. Um, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of going on a weird tangent, but
Well, no, I think, I mean, for me, and it goes in line with the question that I was going to ask you before. I mean, this is the next step in your journey, as a leader, right? And as someone that now you have full control of kind of the direction in how you get to build this entity that is yours and has your fingerprints all over it. And that's really where I was going to go, kind of with it. I just talked to us about, like, what surprised you the most, right? Like, it's one thing to think about being the boss, but like being the boss and like being able to say, well, now, oh, I can now implement that change, or, oh yeah, you know what, now we can do these things. How has that experience and that transition been for you? And I know it hasn't been a long time, but it seems like it's had an impact already.
Yeah, I want so one of my core values is freedom, as just a personal value, and so it has come very naturally to me, and I've been excited that I don't have to ask anybody else what they think and this and that. The hardest thing has been the self motivation though, because you've you always I don't want to say always have to be on, because that's not what I believe, but you are always in that spotlight. And if you've got, owners and guests and you're building a team, like, you're now their support system, and somewhere in there you gotta take care of yourself. And so that's the hardest part, is when you are in a leadership, or, at the top level, of that, is, it's kind of like the whole reverse pyramid thing. Like, the leaders at the bottom, at the pointy end, and the pyramid, the top base is at the top, which is everybody else. And so you're carrying that weight on your shoulders of everybody else. And so it's hard because you got to keep them going, and you're tired, you're exhausted. And as freeing and awesome as it is to make all the decisions, it is so nice sometimes when somebody else makes the decision. Like, when I do get to come home and eat dinner, and my husband asks me what I want for dinner, I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to make that decision. And it seems so small, but I make 5,000 decisions a day. So, it's, again, it's just, you gotta, like, work on yourself with that and help yourself, because that weight can definitely get overbearing. You can start getting not motivated anymore, and why am I doing this? And this is just too much. But you gotta, like, you gotta keep filling the water on the flower. Like, you gotta keep growing. You gotta keep, putting into yourself.
Well, and not only put into yourself, like to expand on that, like you keep putting yourself out there. Let's talk a little bit about your involvement with Favor, right? Which, to those that don't know, formerly known as Florida fill in the blank Alliance of Vacation
Managers, yeah.
Rental Managers. Is that right?
Yeah, so it was Florida Verma, and then, to help separate, the associations, because everyone thought we were just a leg of the national Verma. So a couple years ago, we made the decision to rebrand. So now it's Favor, which is the Florida Alliance for Vacation Rentals, completely separate association, from any other associations in the industry.
What was your involvement in, I know you're still involved with Faber, but like what like you just are done with a presidency? Is that like really talk about this a little bit? Like
Yeah, so I guess it was actually right before I had left Gibson. I was at Gibson uh when I had gotten the position. So I was president of the Northwest Florida chapter of Faber.
okay.
And so I did that for a couple years. And then, of course, as we all know, the business Breathe Easy has been growing. And so I just stepped down from that at the end of last year and said, hey, I'll be involved. But again, I have to make so many other decisions elsewhere. I'd love for somebody else to make these decisions and just be a team player kind of situation. So that's where we're in now. That Miss Louisa Baldock with Solely Beachfront has taken over the this chapter, but I'm still, over the past few years, had made all these different connections in the local area and stuff. So still very involved with that in that networking.
So what I love that. What for those that don't know, that those that are, most know who favor what favor is, but it's probably the as far as independent state associations for vacation rental, it's the largest out of any state, and it's the most organized from what I've seen from afar from the outside. What are your big, annually, what are you trying to do and promote? What are the big, like, things that you're trying to do with favor?
Yeah, so I mean, the two biggest things that pop out for me is just first off advocacy, at the government level. So we did go in January or February up to Tallahassee, met with several important people. We split into groups. We all talked about just educating them on what vacation rentals were. As normal, the first question we get is, "Oh, so y'all are Airbnb?"
Yeah.
And our first response is, "No, we are not." And so that was just cool, just basic education and helping them. Like I was so passionate. I love Tallahassee today about being able to go in there and tell people how, local government overreach could affect my small business. And I put my life savings and I didn't get paid for several months, to start this business. And if this government overreach comes in, I can lose it. It can make it really difficult. And so, being able to communicate that to people who can make big decisions is really important. So, overall, again, just advocacy around the state. It's super big with Faber. And then the other part of it, which we, really worked hard to build over the past couple of years, was just local networking. Because of course, advocacy also starts at the local level. As much as I do not like politics, it is reality. And so getting local managers and operators together and having conversations and, if we can all be better neighbors and work together, obviously the world will be a much better place than us all just out there doing random things on our own train tracks.
It's
We talk about this all the
100%. Like I'm doing I do advocacy work like here in Atlanta, right? And it it's always been interesting to me that we're just now getting to the approach of partnership, right? And like I'm a partnership guy, right? Like, and so really embracing from an advocacy standpoint, right? Like especially the professionals, right? That who do it right and who do care about the communities in which they operate, in which they live, in which they work, and the people who are in that. And like really building a partnership type relationship with city government to show that we can coexist. Like it's baffling to me that like even in Florida, like which is a vacation rental, mecca, right? Like you still have to explain vacation rentals to certain people and that they're talking about Airbnbs and like you're in Miramar Beach, like and that's not a huge market for that. So like anyway, it's so much more. But I think that advocacy point is so important. I think Favor does a really good job. And the importance of that is, at the core, it's the people, right? And, being able to build and create communities that make sense, right? That allow our businesses to work and thrive and employ and make our communities better and stronger. And, also being reasonable and, understanding the impacts that our businesses have on those communities and how, we can work in partnership to, again, altruistically live and work together, which we all want to do. So
Absolutely.
kudos
And
for that.
to add to that, like, I one other thing that I got rolled into is that Walton County, Florida, was coming up with some STR ordinance, and it did not directly impact me. I only had one home that would have been impacted by it or is impacted by it. But I was very passionate, like hopped on it like white on rice. And I was like, oh no, because again, just government overreach, you give somebody an inch, they take a mile kind of thing. And I just went into it so extremely just heartfelt, long run, passionately. And it was such a cool stance to take because when I could go up in front of the commissioners and be like, this ordinance does not directly impact me, but I am focused on the future and where this takes it, and being able to take other property managers and tell them that, I just think that's such a really cool way of just getting people together. Is it's you can't go up there and be like, oh, she's just worried about the money and she's just worried about her own business, because that's not what it was about. And the other side of it that, again, I didn't do with intent was that the connections I made, like, commissioners know who I am now because I was up there for every BCC meeting. Um, so the commissioners, they know who I am. People in the community know who I am. Again, didn't do it with intent, but that is networking. That helps my personal brand of Brittany Blackman. That, of course, then flows to Breathe Easy Rentals. So for anybody out there, with a rental company looking to start one or have one, like, being involved, even if it's just a little bit, I mean, it can really do a lot of cool things for your business and get your name out there. And that's all yes, it's volunteer time and work, but that is free advertisement for your name and your brand.
And love it, love it. We talk about this all the time too, but I think from an advocacy standpoint, it's so important to get involved, like, even before something happens, to show the communities that you are a trusted resource in the SDR world. And if they don't know what the SDR world is and they want to get an education, you're that resource for them before shit hits the fan, because at some point it's going to hit the fan. And if you've built those relationships and you're the trusted resource in, every community, everyone that's listening, you're in a whether you're in a vacation rental community or you're in just some sort of metropolis or any place that there's STR, shit's gonna hit the fan. Someone's gonna have a stick up their ass and they're gonna come down and they're gonna complain. And then next thing you know, there's gonna be something on the docket and you're gonna have to come and show up. And if you've already been showing up and you've already been that trusted resource, it's not going to be easy. I don't want to say it's going to be easy, but that foundation has already been started. Like you're part of it, and you can mobilize quicker and more effectively as opposed to like running around last minute trying to go ahead and get resources together. Like this is so important. Every community.
Absolutely.
Let's talk. I want to go back to Breathe Easy here and talk about you've almost 3 years now. You've been you're up to 25 properties. I know you. You're like, oh, I'm happy at 25. You're gonna grow bigger, and I love it. But I want to know. There's two questions I want to know. What's the thing that surprised you the most that you're most proud of? We'll start. Here you can come in whatever order you want. All right. What's the thing you're most surprised at? Like you're the most proud of that what's happened the past 3 years, and what has been your biggest? What the fuck Why did I do that? Like I want to know. Like what's your biggest f up? And like you're like, holy shit, why did I go that way? But I want to know also the thing that surprised you the most. That's like amazing.
Okay, so I've got the quickest answer for the surprise you the most. And that was when I left, I did do everything by the book. I was very conscientious about leaving, knowing that I was staying in the market, starting my own company. So I did do everything legally and correctly. But the coolest thing was that over the past couple years, my owners from the other company have realized that I'm gone. They have found ways to reach out to me, and even as they have turned in their termination notices and been offered significantly less commission rates, they're still coming to me. So I'm charging a higher commission rate, and they will still several of them have still said yes. And so, face value, you're like, oh, cool, but that if they're willing to leave table or money on the table because they trust me and just know that I'm what I'm focused on is quality experience and quality property care. That to me is just cool. You can't pay for that. You
Right.
can't write that
And
on a
you're
postcard.
It's the value
they're
of
not leaving
trust.
money on the table, right? Like it's just, they're
Right.
leaving money like on like written money on the table, but they're getting more in return. Like ROI is way better for them coming with someone that they trust and they know is going to deliver that experience. So truly, they're not leaving any money on the table.
And that's a testament to you, right? Like that's got to feel good. I mean, you can pat yourself on the back for that one. Like, take that win. Like, definitely take
And
that
keep
win.
taking that win. I love that.
Oh well, it was a hard one to swallow because I'm not normally bragful. But that was just like, man, this is cool. And exactly to what you said, I'm like, this is the brand I've built. I've been very conscientious about that from day one. What is my brand promise? What am I out there telling people? Like, what is Breathe Easy in the Destin market where there's 1,000 different managers? What sets us apart? And so that right there is what sets me apart. That people are going to be willing to pay higher because they know what they're going to get out of me, and I'm totally fine with that. Um, I'd rather
And
be
that,
that.
because that's not it. I think you're underestimating. Like, I mean, I think most of our industry knows kind of the weight of like that market. Like, it's no small feat at all in a heavily saturated market. So, talk to us about the market. How are things down that way? What are we running into next week?
One second though. Let's not forget part two.
uh, the biggest F up. I would say it's like a culmination of things. The biggest struggle that I have had is, and because I'm so passionate, is allowing other people to help me
Mhm.
and then not watching over their shoulder. So you can delegate, but if you're still delegating and then watching over them, the whole delegation is just ridiculous. So that's been very difficult because when I was small, when I just had 6 properties, I did everything. I knew where everything was at. You asked me where a frying pan was, and I could tell you exactly what was in each property. Like, I mean, I knew everything. And as you grow, that changes. And so I don't get my reach on everything, and that's been hard to swallow is, I am a perfectionist. My accuracy, level is unreal, unmatched. Like, I am that psychotic person, where I go in and make sure that every coffee mug handle is pointed the exact way, so when you open the cabinet door, you can just pull the coffee mug out by the coffee handle. Like, I'm that OCD, and I have had to, like, swallow that as I have built a team, not everybody else is going to do that, and that's okay. I can either go back behind them and do it if I'm really that worried or coach them on it or just let it go. And so again, that's been the hardest part. I remember like our first 4-star review came in and it was hilarious because, well, it's not really hilarious, but there was hair on the ceiling in the bathroom. And so of course we're all like, how in the this hair get on the ceiling in the bathroom? So I don't know if a girl like had flipped her head upside down. It was maybe like blow drying it and maybe her hair suction to the ceiling. I don't know. Maybe they were doing crazy things. I don't want to know. Um, but even something like that, I was so mortified. I was so upset that she had left this 4-star review. Working my ass off over here. And then I got this review. But then I was like, it's okay. Like, we cleaned it up, obviously. We don't let it happen again. I definitely make sure to check the ceiling in there every time now. But just being able to let go and say, it's okay that not everything is going to be perfect 100% of the time. That is very, very hard for me to accept. I really do struggle with it on a daily basis. But it's okay. And that's part of this industry. It's crazy. It is insane. It does not matter how much you control, stupid shit is going to happen. And with my life coach, like that was one of my biggest struggles that I was really having a lot of anxiety with. I mean, I remember like freaking out the one day because I couldn't get home for a meeting because there was a palm tree in the road. And she's like laughing at me as I'm telling her the story. She's like, "That's amazing. There's a palm tree in the road only in Florida." And I'm like, "I'm angry over here." And she's
Go
like,
lift that
"Brittany,
tree myself, right?
that's right, dang it." And she's like, Brittany, like, control what you can and let go of what you can't. Maybe you were meant to be stuck there, so you didn't get in a wreck a mile up the road or whatever it is. And so just having to swallow that that's my mantra this year is control what you can, let go of what you can't, and just roll with the punches. Again, it's okay if everything's not perfect. And that's just this industry. You try your best, you do what you can. You're not gonna make everybody happy. So
Love it. I love it. So I want to get to Mateo's question, but I also want to talk about like one of the other things that you do amazing in best in the game of all the swag I've ever gotten, the best pen I've ever got. And I don't know if those of you can watching it, is a Breathe Easy pen. The swag game is on point. It writes well. It doesn't, like, I've had so many shitty pens. I've given so many shitty pens out from companies I work for. Truly, I don't know where she gets these pens, but if you ever get a chance to get a Breathe Easy pen at a favorite event, get it one.
y'all, it's all about that swag. You can't be cheap with that. Like nobody likes to go to the conferences and get a bunch of crap that you just have to take home that you don't do anything with and it goes in the garbage. Like that like breaks my heart if I know I've given something to someone and it's going in the garbage. And so we try to be very useful, whether it's, just branding swag as far as t-shirts, hats. We have phone chargers, cooler bags. I've done some really cool stuff because everything that I give should always have a purpose and a reason. It's not to just sit somewhere or go in the garbage. Same thing with our guests. They get a cooler bag, they get koozies. It's nothing big and fancy. Doesn't have to be big and fancy. It just needs to be with purpose. And now you're going to carry that pin around everywhere you go.
It's in my bag. I will show you this pen when I see you next week. You will see this. It's in because it's got that crisscross like little,
I know. I'm coming to get one next week.
Okay, good.
You better bring a couple with you.
I know.
Oh, well.
Talk to us about the market. Talk to us about the market that you're in. What do you see changing? What is different this year than it's been? We know of what happened with COVID and then the influx after. Like where are we at? What are we seeing in the Panhandle?
Yeah, so things are definitely slower, which seems to be the rhyme or reason across the nation from what I can hear. So things are definitely slower. People are booking a lot more last minute. Rates, I would say they're saying very similar to the past 2 years. But also there are certain properties that you're having to reduce the rates because of just oversupply. So I do think we did ourselves a disservice the past 2 years. And because you could rent a tent on the side of the street in Destin, for since COVID, everybody bought for investment these past few years. And of course, real estate rates are out the roof. And now the demand is just slowing down. People don't want to come and pay premium dollar to sit in traffic for 2 hours or to go to a restaurant and wait for 3. You've got a lot of this international travel like the Bahamas and stuff like that are doing all these crazy deals. And, listen, like I'm from small town in North Georgia. If people went like in my hometown, if you went like an hour or two outside of Chatsworth, Georgia, that was like vacation where we were from. Like people did not get outside of their circle or their farm and love them. Now I go on Facebook and I see all these people I went to high school with and everything, and they're down in the Bahamas and the Caribbean and this and that and all these like Europe. And I'm like, what on earth? Like you guys got outside of your farm, like in your circle, like what's going on? And I mean, it's just so crazy, but that's because that's such affordable now. All these other countries that have been shut down and even states, they're running these great deals. They want the tourism back. And so when you have markets like ours that are oversaturated and over tourism, people are going to go pay the same price or less to go to an island where it's not jam packed and they don't have to sit on roads, and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what the real estate market does here. That will definitely be very interesting to see how we roll into next year. I think a lot of us going into 2023 thought that it was going to be like 2022. Like we were all geared up, like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And then somebody turned the light switch off and didn't tell us. And so we've all been scrambling. I mean, I get texts. I probably get 2 texts a week from a different property manager, somebody else. How are you doing? How are things going? What about this? What about that? Seeing emails going out from other companies to their owners and stuff. So I wouldn't paint the picture as it being scary, but I call it just the ebb and flow of the industry.
Right.
It's not jam packed, and you got a lot of owners that have in businesses, like you've got to make that decision of what is your brand? Who are you trying to sell to? Where do you cut that off? And you got to have those conversations with your owners, because you got some owners that,
That's the hard part
yeah,
there, because they the owners have this expectation of the past 2 years of like, this is how it's going to be. And in the owners that are like, that and that you've built a rapport with, understand that it's an ebb and flow, and they understand that this is how it is. And and those that are able to, I wouldn't say pivot, but those that are able to be more open to your suggestions of what we should and shouldn't do. I mean, it's better to drop the price and get someone in there, I would assume 90% of the time. And, because you're not necessarily losing your value of but it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And like, what are we looking at like this stay things, that there's so many different levers you could pull to potentially get more volume through the door. And then is it a heads and beds thing, or is it an experience? There's so many different levers.
Dude, all money's not good money. That's why you hire a professional. And I think I guarantee like that's what's gonna separate, the that's what's gonna separate the best in class from the people who are treading water within this space, because you have to, as a property manager, any manager worth their salt is going to be, communicating to their owners everything that they need to know that's happening within that space. Now, building trust means that those owners will then listen to you too about ways to, you know, fix the issue. If, there is an issue and there are questions, like it's a two-way street, it's a relationship.
Mhm.
And the reality is, like, it's typically a one-way trusting relationship, right? Because the owners are always like, well, unless you have a really great relationship with your managers. But I don't think that's the case. I think, like, with the masses, right? Like, I think people may like their managers, but I'd be interesting to know how many homeowners like really love their managers, like love them, like trust them, like,
And that's where
yeah,
you
and I
win.
think that's what and that's what matters to your business, right? Like, it isn't just heads and beds. It's, it's the trust that you have, from your owner, that they, have in you to be able to do right by them and to, do the best that you can. That's why they hire you, the professional. I know it's not never that easy, but I think we can do better. I think, managers will have to, because they'll have other people's options. And it's kind of like the Jerry Maguire, man. Like, damn, I want my agent. Like, you didn't cry. Like, my agent didn't cry, right? Like, they're going to start looking at, oh, you actually like your agent? Oh, what? You actually like your manager? Your manager actually helps you through these? Okay, because they talk too. They're in forums. The word spreads, and yeah.
Yep.
So,
and that's a good point. I don't feel like, I know we all know this. I just don't feel like we have the conversation enough of, like, everybody talks about the rates and the heads and beds, and I do understand that, not every dollar, is always a good dollar, but a lot of that too falls on you being the property manager. Like, if you're a professional property manager, you just signed yourself up to take care of that property. So what I can guarantee you is that when we do have those not so awesome guests that aren't allowed back, my owners don't know about it. And it's not because I'm hiding anything from them. It's because it gets fixed, and it gets fixed better than it was. So the next time they walk in, they have no idea. I can give you the perfect example. There was one of our owners that came from a very, 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 very large management company. And one of his things up front was, oh, they rent it for 2 nights. It's trash. It smells like weed. There's just crap everywhere. The unit's just always messy. Brittany, I don't want you to rent it for 2 nights. Last summer, something happened. I talked to this family, knew who they were. It was a last minute reservation, put them in there for 2 nights, treated the property well. Everything was good. And I sent that owner an email and said, hey, listen, I know that you normally don't like 2-night rentals, but here is a situation that treated everything well. Just want to let you know. And he goes, Brittany, we trust you. It's totally fine. We can already tell a big difference in how the property's maintained. So now I have that trust. Now, not that I'm actively renting it for 2 nights, but if I have a 2-night hole, I can feel it. I don't have that stress anymore because he knows that even if something goes wrong, I'm going to take care of it. That's the difference in me and what this other property manager did is they just didn't take care of it. They just left it for the owner to experience it. Well, that's not why you're a property manager. That's not why you have a business. You're not just a marketing entity. You're a property manager. You've got to actually take care of these properties and communicate that with the owner. Otherwise, you're not doing your job, and you gotta take that responsibility and quit saying, "Oh, we're understaffed," or "We're this," or "We're that." We all have the same problems. Every short-term rental manager across the nation is dealing with the same stuff in a different fashion. Just quit making excuses. Just do it or drop some of your inventory, whatever it needs to be. Lower your expectations of your owners and let them say, "Hey, this is something we can't do anymore." But just quit making the excuses. It's not fair for the rest of us. I mean, it's cool because I get business from it.
Love it. Hey, Brittany, thank you so much. This has been great. I love that you're on. What do you have anything you'd like to leave our audience with on our way out today?
Just don't stifle the next move because of fear. You said it earlier that you learned from your mistakes. So things are going to be scary. You're going to walk into the unknown. You're going to question. If you're in this industry, you probably are questioning why you're doing this at some point. And just surround yourself with good people. Network. It's awkward. I went to so many conferences over the years by myself, and as much as I hated it, it made me talk to people because I'm not going to awkwardly just sit at the table by myself.
Is that why you
So
talked to me the first
yes,
time?
because I
'Cause
had to. Yes.
I have to talk to this guy.
Yes.
Love
Yeah. But just get out there, man. Fear is always going to be there, but it's in your head. Fear is not a reality.
I love that.
Love it. So, all you listening, check out Brittany Blackman. If you're down in the Destin, Fort Walton Beach, Panama City Beach area, look up Breathe Easy Rentals.
Yep.
We'll have a link in the show notes and on the website, so you can go ahead and book directly through there. Uh, Brittany, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming. Thank you
you.
for coming on. And don't forget, come see us.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I
we'll
will
be
be there
down
at
there.
that bonfire.
Oh, definitely. And definitely, yeah, come check it out. And we want the wider community to be out there. We want to come and celebrate
This is
you.
actually going to be going out on the second day. So, if you're hearing this right now and you
go to the
are,
beach
we had a
immediately.
bonfire last night. We had a bonfire last night in Miramar Beach. But tonight, when you listen to this, Inlet Beach, go there. We'll put a link in the for Inlet Beach as well, so you can go ahead and sign up for that. So
Okay.
all right,
Hey man, it's a celebration.
it's a celebration. We're here
Gotta
to celebrate.
the best in class.
Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thanks, y'all.
This podcast is a Hospitality.fm production.